Lane is our new superintendent here at Brainerd Public Schools, and Steve is our business manager. So I'm going to introduce them, and they're going to kind of get going with their PowerPoint. When they are done, we are going to be having a Foster Jacobs Johnson community kind of listening session where we will give some feedback, and the stickies and the markers will all make sense in a little bit. It's not just elementary school we get to play, but if you want to put your name on your card, that would kind of be a great way for them to get to know as we're talking to folks tonight, who is here also. We also have Reed Campbell, one of our school board members, here with us tonight as a part of this process. And our goal tonight is just to kind of get feedback from our community and see what folks are.
Ruth Nelson.
Yeah. So we will get started.
Very good.
Turn it over to Lane and Steve.
All right. I'm just going to say a very brief welcome to everyone. It's just an honor to have each of you here tonight. With this beautiful, beautiful weather, we kind of wondered if we were going to have people. So thank you for taking the time to come and hear about where we've been in this process and where we're planning to go. Just to give you kind of a brief idea of how the thing's going to run. Steve Lund is going to begin. Steve is our business manager and was one of the leaders on the last 2 years when they worked with the Cunningham group to get a big picture view of what's going in the district are. When he's completed with his part of the presentation, then I'm going to take over and talk about where the district hopes to go with this and how we plan to narrow the scope so that we know what the plan is and bring forth recommendations to the board to move Milton. And actually Glenn is going to lead you through the listening session, and Erica will help by picking up and getting some of the answers that you believe are some of the strengths of the district, needs, not only throughout the district, but also Garfield specifically. So with that being said, we want to say thank you again for coming tonight, and I'll turn it over to Steve.
Thanks. All right, so like Lane's mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going tonight. I like the size of the group. I feel like we should be sitting around our kitchen table. So, which hopefully will, lend itself to some good open dialogue tonight. So, we're going to talk a lot about facilities, okay? So not surprising, we've been in a process here over the past couple of years, really assessing our facility needs. But we can't forget that at the core of this is going to be our students. So what role do facilities play in our responsibility to provide the best opportunities for education for our students? But we're here to share information about where we've been, all the information that we have gathered over the last couple of years relative to our facility planning. But more importantly, we're here to gather feedback from you about what you perceive the needs of this school, of Garfield, but also the district as a whole. So Glenn will take you through that part of the process once we get there. So over the past, like I mentioned, over the past couple of years, we've been busy gathering a lot of information, okay? We first started taking a look at our demographics and what that means with our enrollment. We do a lot of enrollment projections with the school district. It's a very important part of how we plan for each school year. Our revenue clearly is tied to that, so our resources are tied to the number of students we have. So accurately predicting students is really an important part of what we do. But as part of this process, we actually engaged with a consultant who was a demographer, actually the former state demographer for the state of Minnesota. Brainerd came up and took a little deeper look into things that we normally don't maybe look at when we do our enrollment projections, things such as housing starts, okay? But she also included things that we do look at, which is going to be identifying the number of births that have occurred in our school district and how that relates to the incoming kindergarten class each year. We look at as students migrate through grade levels, what that looks like each year, as well as how many students we graduate. So she folds in all of that information that we traditionally look at and then sends it outside information as well to come up with a look at what our enrollment looks like for the next 10 years. Then we have folded that information into, if we're projecting our enrollment to be X in the next 10 years, what does that look like for how many students we are able to fit in our school buildings? Okay, not only right now in terms of capacity, but what we should perhaps maybe be planning for over the next decade. And then finally, we spent a lot of time, in fact, we spent an entire summer with a group of engineers in our staff that scoured our school buildings. They went from basements all the way up to the roofs and tried to identify those things that we better be paying attention to from a future maintenance perspective over the next 10 to perhaps 20 years. So let's start out by talking a little bit about enrollment. Come on in. It's just getting good. So like I said, we engaged with the state demographer, former state demographer, who now does a lot of consulting work, and she looked at what we should anticipate for our enrollment projections for the next 10 years. We did that work as a starting point in 2014-15 school year. At that time, we had enrollment of about 6,436 students. And as she traveled through the different scenarios, whether it be a high, medium, or low, she came up with a growth no matter what. But if you look at the trends, you can see that it's not necessarily insurmountable, quite manageable actually, because you can see that over the next 10 years on the low side, we could travel from 6,436 up to just shy of 6,700, a growth of about 250 students over our base of that amount represents about growth of less than 0.5% on average for the next 10 years. The mid-level is about 6,900 students, and the upper level growth expectations could be as high as about 7,100. But when you look at it, even the highest growth level says, on average, you're going to grow about 1% per year for the next 10 years. So something that is going to help our planning process moving forward. But when we did a lot of this preliminary work, we really kind of focused in on that mid-range growth. So what does that mean in terms of capacity? So when we take and apply the capacity, we look at a lot of different things. We clearly look at a broad perspective as far as how many students per square foot is appropriate in our different schools. But we also factor things such as the core spaces, like what we're standing in or sitting in right now, the cafeteria, the gymnasium, the media center, or the site, playground. Okay, so what kind of capacity can those core spaces within these buildings support, in addition to the classroom spaces or the overall square feet per student? So when we apply some of those metrics to our current buildings, you can see that our current capacity with our 6 elementary schools across the district has about 2,150 students. So right now we have a current enrollment of about 2,450, or 300 shy. And if you've been in our buildings, which I'm sure many of you have, you can kind of feel and you can see that tightness of space, okay? But now we can apply what the enrollment on the average growth, not the low, not the high, but that average, if we reflect back to the 6,900 that we talked about on the previous slide, and apply that to just our elementary students, it says we'll anticipate elementary growth up to about 2,625. So really, we have space needs right now, about 300 in our elementary schools, just as it sits right now with our current enrollment. We should be planning for somewhere around upwards close to 500 over the next 10 years. Okay? When you get to the middle of high school, you can see that actually, from a capacity standpoint, we're positioned well. We did a lot of things right when we constructed the middle school, but certainly one of the things is we built it big enough. So we have the ability to grow into about 2,200 capacity. We only have about 2,000 there right now, so we've got some flexibility with space there. The high school, from a capacity standpoint, we're positioned well there as well. The only thing is when we look at our high school, I think we have some other things that we need to address there beyond just capacity. So let's look at the elementary school space and put this in perspective. We talked about the square feet per student. We'll get to that in a minute. But you can really feel some of that tightness when you get into our buildings. Some of these buildings, such as this one, were designed for perhaps 3 sections or 15 classrooms spread across K-4. And we've traveled and been able to move spaces around to the best of our ability to accommodate much more beyond that. So we've taken spaces that traditionally aren't meant for instruction and created instruction out of them. Okay? We've moved instruction out to the hallways in some cases just to make sure that we can maximize the use of spaces in our building. And we've taken storage spaces and we've converted them to instruction and put storage just about anywhere we can possibly think of it. Okay? Including boiler room. But when I talk about the space comparison, or the space square foot per student broad look at that, we do a lot of comparisons when we look at how we operate, both financially and things such as this, when we look at how we're utilizing our space. compare ourselves to a group of districts that really look like us, okay? And they're most often going to be in our conference, so these are going to be the districts that we compete against on the football field or basketball court. But there are also districts that look like us in terms of size, demographics. They're in communities that also look like ours too. They're outstate Minnesota school districts. And when you look at how we compare on a square foot per student, that broad level measurement of the tightness of our buildings, you can see that MDE says, depending upon the size of your building, you should probably have somewhere between 125 to 155 square feet per student. So it's not surprising when you look at our peer group average here is about 140. But you can see where we lie down in that 124, 125 range. And we're not down there alone. We're both kind of bookended between Bemidji and Moorhead. So what are they doing in Bemidji right now? And what are they doing in Moorhead? Okay, so a lot of districts are doing a lot of this facility planning work, and they're looking at how the very same fundamentals we are, and they're applying some of that with solutions that make sense in their community. Just like what we're doing right now. We're going to apply some of these metrics as we start to engage with our community and bring in feedback from our community to try to find that solution that makes sense for us. There's no one size fits all. So let's talk a little bit about our district in terms of condition. Let's first talk about our overall district. We're the 5th largest school district by enrollment in outstate Minnesota, outside of the 7-county metro area. We're 516 square miles. We educate students at 12 facilities, about 1.2 million square feet on about a half section of property. So we've got a lot to care for. So when you look at what the span of our 12 facilities from an overall age perspective, and it's not surprising that age really is going to reflect what we should be looking at for the condition or the future maintenance. So you'll kind of connect some of this in a minute. So when you look at the average age of our schools, it's about 44 years, and it ranges from 1929, the oldest, which is the Washington building, which is not quite 90 years old, all the way down to 2004 construction of Forest View, which is it's nearing 15 years old. But what's interesting to note on this is you can see as a community, as we travel through construction of these buildings over that span of time, we've kind of had a pattern of a replacement cycle being about every 10 to 15 years, with the exception of the last one. We took about a 35-year pause between the construction of the high school and Forest View. Okay, so to put this in perspective, having 12 buildings, if you replaced one every 10 years, by the time you got back to the very first one you constructed, it would be 120 years old. If you do a replacement cycle of 35 years, like we did on the last one, by the time you got back to the first one, it would be 420 years old. Okay, so we want to pay attention to that replacement cycle as we keep our buildings fresh over the span of that length of time. It's important. I talked about then the average age of our facilities. You can see the range of it, and when you average that out, the average age is about 44, 45 years of age, spread across all of those facilities. There again, using that same comparison group that we talked about before, those districts that look like us and communities that also look like us, you can see where we land in there. But then when we do this comparison too, I think it's important that we also compare ourselves to the districts that not necessarily are comparable, but the ones that we compete against. And those are going to be our neighboring districts. And you can see where we lie with the average age of our facilities in terms of those districts that are neighboring to us. And you can see then what they're doing in Wilmer, which is the next oldest one from ours. So there again, as districts look at some of the same fundamental information and start to begin to develop solutions that are unique for their community. And we're doing the very same process right now to try to find out that very same solution that fits for us. So let's talk a little bit then about that future maintenance. There again, tied to the average age, as our buildings begin to age, things begin to reach their end of their useful life. So future maintenance, not surprisingly, includes renewal of those things that are reaching or nearing the end of their useful life. It also includes things that we have not had the funds to do to bring up to current standards. Deficiencies such as accessibility or security entrance points to our building. But in general, it includes things such as tuck pointing, which is repairing the grout in between the bricks. Boy, we have a lot of bricks. It's going to be a lot of roofs. We have a lot of roofs to take care of, as well as boilers And we care for a sea of parking lots. But in addition to that, it's going to be things just as obvious such as windows. So when you look at that future maintenance, there again, here's where you can connect that average age or the age range of the buildings. You can see, not surprising, and this is in terms of $1 million, when we roll this all together, there again, going through, scouring through the buildings and identifying those things that are going to need to be replaced in the foreseeable future. It totals nearly $90 million. It's a big number, but there again, it's spread over a 1.2 million square feet, 12 facilities. So it's not surprising that Washington, being a building that's nearing a century mark old, has future maintenance out there of $20 million. And you can travel all the way down to our newest building, with Forest View being about $1 million. Okay? But the important thing to look at, not only in context of the total dollar amount, is then to apply the size of those buildings. So you can look at Washington, while it was at the top of that graph as far as total dollar amount, it's a big building. It's 140,000 square feet. So when you apply that across 140,000 square feet, you can see that it lies a little bit further down there, about $145 per square foot. But why is this important? When you start to look at that and compare a per square foot of future maintenance that you're going to be obligated to over the foreseeable future, and compare that to what it would cost to do new construction, it's something that you're going to want to take into account when you do some of that planning work. There again, when you look at, for example, the Harrison and Lincoln buildings are at the top of this one. But if you go back, they're not at the top. They're down below those last two on that graph. But there again, Harrison and Lincoln are small buildings. They're about 35,000 square feet. So when you try to spread $9 million of future maintenance over that size of structure, you really got to start thinking strategically about that. Strategically thinking, when we got through some of this gathering of information, we begin to imagine solutions of what would address some of the things that we identified. And through that process, also discover opportunities. Okay, so as we've traveled through this for the last couple of years, we've talked about it with our community. You've probably heard of things such as the facilities plan, and it includes things such as right-sizing or renewing and reinvesting in our facilities, perhaps repurposing and recreating. And when I say recreating, I mean taking a facility, and perhaps a facility or a school isn't about the building it's in, it's about what's in the building. So recreating could perhaps be reconstructing a building and taking what's in the building and putting it in a new facility. Okay? So we begin to imagine what those solutions would be and begin talking about them with our community in terms of what that plan can look like. Okay? So now more importantly, where do we go from here?
Thank you, Steve.
How many of you were part of the team that worked with the planning calendar the last couple of years? Were any of you part of that? Well, I just really want to take this time to thank all the people for the work that they did, because there, as you can tell from Steve's presentation, there is a comprehensive plan of what the big umbrella looks like. As far as what the needs of our district are, looking at the 12 facilities within our school district. When I came in July, one of the things, the tasks that the board asked of me is, Lane, where do we go next? How do we, look at this umbrella of items, this laundry list of items that we have for our entire school district, and prioritize and bring it down to a plan that we can approve, that we can bring to the voters in the future. And so in October, the Board of Education approved that the work was done during the first phase of that. And in November, I brought forth to the Board of Education a 6-phase process that I thought were the next steps for us to be able to really get into the nitty-gritty of each of our buildings to identify what the highest priority must-do items are, the should-do items, and so on in each of the buildings. So at that time, the one thing that we talked about is that in all of our decision-making, the one thing that we're going to do is put our students' educational needs at the very forefront of our decision-making and all of the work that we do. And to provide the highest quality educational opportunities for our learners, were our facilities going to need? What were we going to have to address to meet facilities that promoted the opportunity, the innovation, and the success that we've talked about in our tagline and as part of our mission with our district? We talked a little bit as a board about what the 8, we got it down to 8 out of many items, but what are some of the main objectives that we have? The first one is we wanted to ensure that we had safe and secure environments for all of our children, our staff members, and all of our guests that come to our school district. That when people come to our buildings, that they are safe and secure. The second thing Steve alluded to in great detail, what are some of the mechanical and the educational adequacy needs that we have? Taking care of roofs, looking at some of the energy efficiencies that we could have with potentially new windows in some areas, looking at the tuck pointing, and some of the mechanical pieces, the HVAC systems, the age of the boilers, and how we can be more efficient with those in those areas. The third objective was to look at the space that fosters best practice instruction and 21st century learning. I talk a lot when I meet with staff and I talk about the fact that we're 17 years into the 21st century anymore. It's not like we're looking for 21st century learning because we're already deep into it. We're just about a quarter of the way through. But if you look back to when the turn of the century happened, look at all the change that has occurred with technology, with innovation, with best practice instruction, with core standards, with all of the changes that we've seen in the past 17 years. Well, what do the next 17 years look like? And how are our facilities going to be conducive to help us to adapt so we're providing best practice instruction for our learners? We also want to make sure that our spaces promote robust programs in all of the 4 A's. The academics, the athletics, the activities, and the arts. We know that all 4 A's are important to a well-rounded and comprehensive curriculum in our school. We also wanted to make sure that we have increased community collaboration, ownership, and workforce development. One of the things that I shared with the board is that I really felt that we needed to hear from our people. We needed to hear from all of our employees within the school district who are working in these facilities and what the strengths and concerns are that they have in those working environments. We also needed to talk to the public about what the needs are and how we as an educational system right here in the Brainerd School District, how we can provide the opportunities that our children need. One of the things that we hear a lot when we go to meet with like business owners and the chamber and such is the workforce development piece. That they want to make sure that we as a K-12 system are providing the skills and strategies necessary for developing our workforce of our future. Whether it's developing work-ready skills in some of our career and technical education areas, if it's developing the skills so our kids can be successful at CLC and then work within our community, or if it means going on to a 4-year post-secondary education and hopefully coming back and contributing with their skills. But what are the workforce development pieces that we can enhance and collaborate with our business partnerships and our college and so on to develop a strong community? We also wanted to look at the visionary technology piece. I talked a little bit ago, think of how technology has changed in 17 years. And what's it going to be like in 17 years from now? We don't even know. But what kind of visionary thinking are we doing to be prepared for that, to have the infrastructure necessary that our technology people, our experts that we've got within the school district, that they can help to enhance that program and our teachers can help provide the learning that they need and have those tools available. We also want to make sure that we're transparent and engaging our community and building that community trust. If there's questions that people have, that we're able to get the answers to them. And that we're providing a wide array of communication so that if there are questions, that people are getting their questions answered, whether it's through our news media locally or if it's through websites within our district. And the last one, and certainly probably one of the most important of all, is that we know that anytime you go for any kind of a bond referendum to a community, that it really is a difficult and a generous gift from the community. And to take into consideration that we are providing the greatest opportunities for our taxpayers' generous investment, to keep that in mind in all the decision and the planning that we make as we move forward. So we talked about 6 phases of how we could do this. And I'll just kind of go through them quickly, and then I'll take each one of them in detail. The first one is to provide an extensive communication plan from the beginning of the project forever. Second one is to have more internal listening sessions with our staff within our schools, and to have more community listening sessions like we're doing tonight, to hear from you about what you believe the strengths and the challenges are at Garfield and throughout the school district that we have. Phase 3 is some potential surveys and assessments that the board will have some opportunities if they need and want more information. Phase 4 is to pull together all of the information that they received in the Cunningham report, but also through the communication that we're going to do, the listening sessions, and the surveys and assessments, and to come together, bring all of that data, and it'll be a great big 3-ring budget of data, so that the board can make the best decision for our school district as we move forward, and help us to get to phase 5, which is the bond referendum process itself. And in hopes that we go to the voters and are successful in an election, then we hope to move into phase 6. In December, one of the things that I brought to the board is that we really need experts who do this for a living, who bring school districts through these kinds of a process to help us to be successful in that we bring forth right plan. And we were so fortunate to have just an awesome plan brought forward to us. And it was a combination of 3 companies that are working together to help us in this. Tonight, Glenn Chido is here from Foster Jacobson Johnson to help guide you in a listening session to help that process. We have Erica Markison here with Woodsett Smith and Knowlton, who's at all of our meetings helping us to generate a great plan. And also, they collaborated with Krause Anderson to make this happen. And so let me talk about each of them in a little bit more detail. The first phase, the communications phase, like I said, begins right at the very beginning when we started this process. Way back at the beginning when we started putting together an RFQ to look for services to help us. We know that we need to meet the needs of our stakeholders in our community through a whole variety of means. If it's the Brainerd Dispatch, if it's the radio system, if it's through our school newsletters, if it's through pamphlets that we put together, more hands-on type of communication. But we also know that there's another means today with the technology we have, that there are a whole number of people that their means of communication is through technology. Whether it's a Facebook page, if it's through district website, if it's through websites throughout the community. But what we want to do is make sure that we are communicating the vision of educational achievement and providing the residents with all of the information that they need. One of the things that we've done through this process, and I want to thank Carla Sand, our communications director, and is also looking for Sarah, but I don't see her tonight. They have been working diligently as a communications team to develop a brand new website called Blueprint 181. I love this website name because it's just so pertinent. The B for the Brainerd School District, Blueprint meaning we're looking at facilities, District 181, and we are looking at investing, leading, and growing within our school district. The second phase, and this will be fluid. It'll be fluid, changing every single day based on what the needs are of our community. The second phase are the stakeholder engagement listening sessions, and that's what we're doing tonight. Before April, Glenn and another gentleman by the name of Eric had come to all of our schools, and they had 44 listening sessions with our employees. We promised our employees that we would be back to them, listening to them at least 3 times during this process. This week, while we're doing some of our public listening sessions, you're meeting with the staff during the day. I know you had a wonderful meeting at Garfield this morning. You said it was an awesome turnout. And they're coming back now with the information that they collected from their very own listening sessions. In the fall, for sure, we're going to be coming back again with how all of this information comes together and how we're leading the board through this process. We also, so we're meeting with the teachers, administrators, support staff, and students. We're also doing these community listening sessions where we get to hear from members of the Board of Education, from our parents, from our civic groups, from our business partnerships, our school-centered neighborhoods like Garfield, and hearing from our community membership. We want to hear from you what all the strengths are of our schools, what some of the challenges are, what advice you would give to the Board of Education when they're making a decision. And those are the pieces tonight that Glenn is going to be walking you through. I want you to know that we're going to be back again. We're going to be bringing the information back and sharing it with our local communities as well, getting more information, and throughout this whole process. Phase 3 is really up to the board. If they feel that they need more information, if they want to know a little bit about what are some of the public polling analysis, or what is the voter, looking at the voter profile analysis, if they want to get some of that information, we may look at some of that. One of my favorites is to do a survey of our stakeholders within our communities. You can do those by phone, where you call, say 500 homes and have a list of 50 questions or whatever that get very specific. You can also have different surveys now online. You can even do some where you send them home or send them out by mail. But that is always a possibility for the school if they want to gain more information. And they're kind of nice because you hit a larger group of people sometimes, and also sometimes people that don't want to say things publicly have an opportunity to do it in a more private environment in which to do that. They also, one of my favorites, another one is to look at the enrollment data, but I like to look at the GIS mapping. Where is the growth within our school district? Where are more school-aged children being born and living? And where are some of the areas where they're decreasing? So if we're looking at adding on space somewhere, does it meet where the added enrollment looks like the growth is happening within our communities? And so there's a lot of these different types of opportunities. Plus, another really important one is that we're going to be doing an extensive analysis of what are some of our financial opportunities, how can we use some of the funds that we have currently to address some of the issues that we have, and what might an overall financial review look like, and bring that information to the board. These are all optional things that the board will have at their fingertips if they choose and feel that they need certain pieces of information. So as you can tell by this diagram, it moves us in phase 4. If you start at the bottom, we've got the Woods, Milton, Foster Jacobs, Johnson, Cross Anderson. They're working with our administrative team now, collecting this information and getting this information to us. We'll eventually be moving it toward to the facilities committee and eventually making the recommendation that the board will vote on. Some of the things that they're going to be looking at as they develop options and alternatives is they'll be looking at project costs and budgeting. They'll be looking at quantifying and comparing some of the operating costs and what some of the savings are. For instance, if you put in new windows, what kind of energy efficiency savings might we be able to find by doing such a thing that can help our current budgets right now? Some other ones are, what are some of the plans for the existing facilities? Steve talked about the 5 Rs. What are the ones that we might want to look at repurposing, resizing, maybe replacing, but looking at the 5 Rs and what could be some possibilities. If the board chooses, they may look at some potential sites selection of sites for additional growth within our school district. We also definitely want to look and analyze in great detail the financial impact to our taxpayers. They also need to determine what a projected timeline looks like and what project costs would look like and what would program and transition planning look like. One of the questions I get asked very, very frequently is, Lane, when do you see this happening? When do you see the board will make this decision so then you go out and you bring it to a referendum in phase 5? And one of the things that I tell people overwhelmingly is that we really don't know. We don't know what the timeline looks like, but we do believe that it's safe to say that it will be within a year. We hope that we're going to have at least 2 rounds of the internal listening sessions done before school's out with all of our staff members. We want to continue to do listening sessions such as this until school's out, but also all summer long in different kind of venues and different ways of meeting with people and sharing our story. Then in the fall, and then this summer, probably the board will be deciding if they want to do some of these additional surveys and assessment to get additional data. And then next fall, they'll come to us and we'll bring forward all this information, and it'll be in a timeline that they believe is conducive. So within a year, I believe that we will be coming to phase 5. And phase 5 is that of the beyond election process. Once the board decides what the project is going to look like, then we're going to be coming out to everyone again and sharing that project with everyone. They'll be setting a possible date for an election. They'll be encouraging public review, and we'll have all the financial impact of what this will be for everyone. And we'll have all of that at our fingertips that we can help to figure it out for families. We also will, at that time, we'll be submitting a review and comment to the Board of Education, because the Minnesota Department of Education, they have to approve any project that we move forward with. And another thing that we're going to have help with is developing what the ballot question or questions might look like that we go to our voters. These are the 5 phases that Foster, Jacobson, Johnson, Winston Smith, Knowlton, Crow Sanderson have been hired to assist us with. Our hope and our goal, we hope that we're going to be able to have a successful result and a successful bond election when we do go to the voters. And if that happens, then we'll move into phase 6, construction management and all the transition planning that goes along with that. And so those are the 6 phases. That's the plan for moving ahead, for generating the must-do, what we believe are the must-do items for our district, and trying to identify and prioritize the needs of our district. So that ends this part of the presentation, but we're open to any questions that you might have regarding either the first couple of years or this process. Okay, then we're going to turn it over to Glenn. And Glenn Chido is here with Foster Jacobson Johnson, and he has been bringing through really a fun activity. So thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for participating.
Thank you, Lane. Initially here, just to tell you a little bit about who I am and where I come from, or the path I've traveled. My name is Glenn Chido, and I'm a retired superintendent from Park Rapids, Minnesota. I retired about 6 years ago. Actually, I'm in my 6th year of retirement. So far, I failed because I went to work about 3 days after I retired, so I haven't handled the retirement piece very well. But nonetheless, but prior to that, I was down in southern Minnesota, Renville County West. That was my first superintendent position, and that's right just south of Wilmer, Renville, Sacred Heart, Danube. Interesting enough, we just left the meeting, and this gentleman came up to me right after. He was a principal at Renville. This would have been before I got there, but what a small world. We started comparing notes real quick. It was just great to have a conversation with him about that particular district. But before that even, I was up in Thief River Falls. This was long before Superintendent Larson Ended up there as a superintendent, but I started off as a third grade teacher. Kind of moved my way up through the system. At one point in time, I was a special ed teacher, I was an assistant principal, I was an assistant SUB, curriculum director, and so on and so forth. They just kind of kept moving me around the district. Quite frankly, I'm thinking they were trying to figure out a job I could actually handle. But I was there for many, many years, and I coached as well for about 20 years. Kids graduated from there, and so on and so forth. But prior to that, or coming back to where I started with this particular position, we did a fairly large project in Park Rapids. And I was pretty happy with the process. I enjoyed what they did and how folks handled things and so forth and so on. So when it came that day, or close to that day that I was ready to retire, I did a little research with my current boss, Dave Bergeron, and sure enough, they hired retired educators. And this is all we do, in the sense of the word that I've been with them, like I said, about 6 years. I'm going to say a neighborhood of 100 schools maybe that I've done this type of thing. Listening sessions across not only Minnesota, but North Dakota and South Dakota. And then Lane referred to a gentleman by the name of Eric Kaiser. He's a retired principal out of Duluth. He was part of their process when they did, I think it was close to a $300 million project up there not too long ago, but he was involved in that piece. So where are we at? We've done, as Lane's already alluded to, we've done, gosh, 40 plus, and I kind of lost count relative to how many listening sessions, but predominantly they have been with staff. They've been with the teachers, they've been with the non-certified folks, the EAs and custodians and cooks and so on and so forth. And we've met with them throughout the first couple of months here, and I say this very graciously to the people that helped schedule that. I'm not going to say it was easy, but we pulled it off and we got through all of that, meeting with all of those groups, and again, as Lane has alluded to, we started now delivering results. I was here this morning, I got to tell you this story, we'll get right into this. I'm pretty sure that Mrs. Kennedy gave her staff some chocolate before we started. Because they came in and they were fighting. Don't shake your head, you were here. Yeah, he's shaking, Dave's going, oh no. They fired questions at me at 7:40 this morning. I wasn't really awake and for that purpose, but nonetheless, they did a great job and they were fun. Actually, it was a great meeting. We have started to deliver those results. And we've got many meetings now over the next 2 to 3 weeks relative to results delivery as well as community meetings. So enough about me. Where we're at now is I'm going to ask you some open-ended questions. This is, you didn't have to study for this test. It's a pretty easy one. But it's some open-ended questions. And I would ask that you write your response on Post-it notes. If you have multiple responses, then write multiple Post-it notes, please. If Amy wrote something down and Tracy was going to write the exact same thing, go ahead and do that. Because we also look for frequency. How many times do you see certain answers? Folks, there's no pressure, there's no obligation for you to write anything if you don't want to. But certainly it came out on a beautiful, beautiful night, so I would hope that you might do that. And the more responses we get, certainly that's helpful in the big picture. Lastly, I've been told by my bosses that they're in budget cut mode, and so what it means to me is that they decided that they pay me by the Post-it note. So I would really appreciate the fact that you would write a lot of Post-it notes, because that might help a little bit of my income as far as being able to bring groceries home to my wife. If you will, I've got a nice long list for her up to this point in time. But please write, and again, if you don't and don't choose to or don't have a response, that's fine. Put it out in front of you, I'll pick it up, we'll put it on the board, and then we're just going to move through the process. Questions? Last piece, I can't leave without saying this. I've known Mrs. Larson since 1985, 81, 83. And we go way back. And so the purpose of me telling you that is that I got plenty of dirt on her. And so if anybody really needs anything, I can be bought. It's very easy. So by all means, I can give you my card, you can call me, email me, and so forth. Just kidding. But I have known Lane for that long. We kind of grew up in the systems, if you will, in northern Minnesota together. Any questions on this? So we'll put it out in front of you, and we'll pick it up. But here's your first question. Let me set this up for you. If Glenn Chida was going to move to the area, And I have several kids. I've got kids in elementary, middle school, maybe I have a high schooler as well. But I ran into you someplace and I just said, what can you tell me about the Brainerd school system that's really good? What are the great things that are currently happening here? What would you say? What would you tell me? I mean, why would I want to bring my kids here? Why not go to Pillager or someplace? Tell me that. What would you tell me about the great things that are happening here? Great teachers. Now you two are the problem children in this particular. We always have a couple. Always have a couple. Great teachers, great teaching staff.
Teachers, great teachers.
Wow.
That's
That's right.
Location, people.
Neighborhood schools.
High education rankings in the state, strong administrative staff, competitive sports and activities.
Dedicated teachers, community schools.
Just want you all to know that Mr. Campbell's cheating because he's already heard these questions and now he knows what's coming. Communication, family oriented, great events. We got plenty. We got plenty. You guys just keep going.
Hometown atmosphere. Education rankings. Small school with great community feel. Great staff.
Challenges kids. Did I say that right? Okay. Teachers who care for kids.
Location.
What else? Got one coming, Eric? No? Anything else? Oh.
Small class sizes.
Okay, you don't have to go overboard it. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Right. All you want. I'm just kidding. Anything else? Okay. One thing that happens when you have been involved like I have, with as many schools as I have. Eric, you want to take this?
We can still put them on.
We end up with stories. So here's one of many that I have. I was working with a group of students in Grafton, North Dakota. They're a little bit hard on North Dakota right now, so bear with me. Sorry, Lane. But nonetheless, I'm working with a group of students. We always ask similar questions of every group. And the other thing before I get to the story is we did meet with your students here. So I don't know if any of you happen to have high school students. If not, we did meet with a high school group. They were great. They were fun. And one of the things I always say about that is high school kids don't have the adult filter. And so they kind of tell you what it's all about. The good news is they're very respectful. And the better news is they're usually pretty spot on with their comments relative to the spaces and so forth and so on. That being said, back to the story. Grafton, North Dakota. I asked this first question, great things and so forth and so on, so I thought I'd set it up and say, okay, now we're gonna turn the hourglass over, and not one kid in the room knew what an hourglass was. They all, their eyes got about this big, and I went, okay, that didn't work very well. And where I was going with it is the challenges. What are our challenges in our school district? And every district has them. What's the challenges that we face here in the Brainerd School District? Now you two are gun shy because I'm standing on your shoulders.
We got space and space again.
You got parking issues. School board, poverty, lack of community involvement in schools.
We got growing class sizes
Small kitchen.
and teacher-student ratio.
Yeah. Small kitchen, we're referring to whoever wrote that in here. Garfield? Yep, I just want to make sure.
And transportation.
Okay. Thank you. Losing kids to neighboring districts. Dollars. Community involvement. Already said transportation. Parking. Busing Limitations, yes. Anything else?
Old schools, high
No.
class sizes, small class size, and aging infrastructure.
No industry, good paying jobs. What else? No pressure on these on standing, right? Hold your shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, uh-huh. Okay, this isn't your college theme we're talking about, just an idea. There you go. Took that long for 3 words? Oh. Hi.
You guys can read it, usually my handwriting.
Well, at my age, it's like this. I got the bifocals out here somewhere. A high number of low-income families.
Community trust.
Anything else? Cutting assistance in classrooms, in parentheses, budget. Anything else? Okay, let's. You got more? Fine.
One more copy.
Okay. You guys going home or here? Okay. This next question. If you were going to write the headlines for the Brainerd newspaper 10 years from now, what would you like it to say? Or how would you write it? What could say is relative to what the district, or about the district. What would it say? You're going to write the headlines for the newspaper 10 years from now. What would it say? How would you write it? If you do a really good job, let's see if we can get you a job. Part-time, no offense, you'll need it right back. What would it say? I feel like a stalker. I want that. Brainerd ranks top schools 11 years in a row. Okay, all right. What would it say? Brainerd ranks number 1 in educational opportunities. Achievement gap in ISD 181, new low. Brainerd provides highest level of education in the state. Read, you got one?
Same one.
That's okay. Copy that. Brainerd schools are best in the state. Anything else? Yes, no, Tracy?
One more.
One more. Highest percent of graduates in the state. Anything else? Okay. This next question is basically a 2-part question. And this is more facility related. If you could suggest what improvements and/or repairs would you make to the Garfield School to enhance the education of our kids in this building? What repairs and improvements would you make in the Garfield School to enhance the education of our kids in this school? Secure entrance.
Proper learning space, adequate technology, and appropriate staffing levels.
Bigger classroom space, increased playground equipment, larger class space, secure.
Sidewalks for walking to school. kids walking in streets.
More technology in every classroom. Smaller classroom sizes, in parentheses, ratio, meaning bodies in the building. Provide teaching assistance in all classes.
We have technology improvements, larger classrooms.
More storage. Anything else? Staff and parent parking. Jody just wants another spot. Hold on, you're pointing at her. We'll get plenty now, right? Yes. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, then let's broaden the scope a little bit. Now, we talked, or the question, and I said it was a two-part question, we talked about this building in itself. Let's look district-wide. Same question, same setup. Improvements and or repairs. What would you suggest or recommend now district-wide? In a sense, excluding Garfield now, because we just talked about that, but district-wide. Obviously, if spaces or buildings that you're familiar with, what would you suggest? District-wide. New auditorium.
We got new pool, more elementary school space, better facilities for pre-K and after-school programs.
Got improvements in aftercare facility, in parentheses, update. Keep school sizes small. Keeping our schools centrally located, no edge of town schools. Space, larger teaching areas.
Equal opportunities in all schools.
Appropriate staffing levels, appropriate technology, appropriate space.
Facilities suitable for 22nd century learning.
Central located for location, for schools. Transportation limits eliminated. No more teaching in closets.
Show that picture.
Okay, now you want to hear a closet or what? Jesus. No more teaching in closets. Just a comment though, in getting back to it, I was going to mention it earlier in one of the comments relative to security. And I shared this last night at the board meeting, shared it throughout the day. But I've been in a lot of the buildings, and every building I've been in, and this is a credit to the school board and superintendent and principals right on down to staff. People are asking, when I'm walking around, who are you? What do you need? And I'm not talking about once or twice. I almost felt like I was being assaulted in some cases. I'm just kidding. But even with my little visitor badge on, people were asking me the question, what do you need? What are you doing? Can I help you? And so on and so forth. And now my story about Garfield. I came here, this is a while ago, and Jody didn't happen to be in the office. So I went into the secretarial staff. I said, I'm on Trito. I had my little shirt on. I said, I'm just going to walk around the building and look at spaces. Now she wanted my driver's license. I didn't happen to have my checkbook on me. So I had no driver's license. So now I'm trying to explain. I know I've known Jody for a long time as well.
Yes, maybe not as long as Lane.
No.
Glenn lived down the block from me when I was growing up.
Yeah, easy on the age thing. My goodness, Jody. But anyway, no, that's true. Yeah, her brother and my daughter actually were very good friends. But anyhow, so the secretary wanted my license, and again I had my little shirt on, and I and I couldn't convince her to let me walk around the building. I even pulled my phone out to show her emails to say that my name was Glenn Child. And finally, someone came in and said, it's okay. And then they let me. But my point is that obviously people take it very seriously. And I think that's a credit to the district as a whole. Granted, security is an issue, and there's no question about that. But at least people are aware and doing what they need to do. Enough on that start. Any other part of the district-wide improvements? Well, yeah. Wouldn't be the first time I've been asked to leave the school. Any other? Okay, last question. Again, Lane alluded to this. The school board members certainly that are here tonight, they're fully aware of this. At some point in time, when all this data, all this information is put together, now it's going to come to them. They're going to have to start looking at stuff and certainly analyzing and prioritizing and so on and so forth. And trying to figure out where we're going, what we're doing, and how we're going to do it. From this point forward, though, if you were going to give them advice regarding the process, regarding the big picture, for lack of better terms, what advice would you give them? What advice would you give the decision makers? And I categorize that as your school board, certainly your superintendent, administrative staff, all those people in business management all become part of that process, as well as many other layers of supervisors and so forth. But what advice would you give them as they move forward? Don't ever bring this clown back here again. We had a long day. Keep community informed of decisions, decision-making process. Be transparent. Have emergency meeting with business community. Glade, is it Glade?
Glade.
Say.
That's Glade.
Okay, and COC and Region 5, large employers, got that? On need, capitalized, for referendum to pass. What else?
You got community involvement. Keep trying to reach out to public. Find ways to